Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're digging into a literal medical mystery, and it's happening right now inside our youngest, supposedly healthiest generation. Usually we think of chronic disease as something that happens when we get older, right? Well, recent data is painting a totally different and honestly a pretty alarming picture. So we're going to uncover exactly what's happening to young adults today. We'll look strictly at the data, the biological mechanisms, and most importantly, what the science actually says we can do about it.
Okay, let's dive right in with the big, uncomfortable question. Why is the healthiest-looking generation suddenly getting sick? On the outside, young people today have unprecedented access to fitness info and wellness trends. It's everywhere. Yet, when you look inside the doctor's office, the data reveals a population that is increasingly unwell. Now, I really want you to let this staggering figure sink in for a second. 50%. Half of all adults aged 18 to 34 report having at least one chronic condition. We're talking about 50% of people who should literally be in the prime of their youth. And it gets worse. Nearly a quarter of this demographic reports having not just one, but multiple chronic health issues. So this isn't some weird anomaly. It is a massive, systemic shift in public health. Diseases we usually associate with aging are creeping straight into the under 35 demographic. Just look at the CDC's morbidity reports. 9% of adults under 35 currently have asthma, and 6% report having arthritis. Arthritis! That's historically so rare for this age group. Add in widespread obesity, increasing high blood pressure, and rising rates of clinical depression, and it's crystal clear that our baseline for what's considered normal youth health has drastically changed.
To solve this mystery, our explainer is going to follow the evidence through these 6 crucial sections: the youth health paradox, the autoimmunity spike, the invisible suspect of microplastics, inside the body's systems, the lifestyle accomplices, and finally, reclaiming our health span.
Section 2, the autoimmunity spike. Before we look at the numbers, we really need to get our definitions straight. Normally, our immune systems create antibodies to fight off bad stuff like viruses and bacteria. But sometimes things go wrong, and they create what are called anti-nuclear antibodies, or ANA. Basically, these are proteins that mistakenly turn on our own bodies. They cross enemy lines to attack healthy cells by targeting their center, the nucleus. Seeing ANA in the blood is actually a primary biomarker doctors use to identify autoimmune disorders.
And when we look at the NIH data, wow, a massive warning sign flashes. Positive ANA blood tests in teenagers didn't just take up, they nearly tripled between 1988 and 2012. This study looked at over 14,000 participants, and out of all the demographics they tested, adolescents saw the absolute sharpest rise. This tells us, without a doubt, that young immune systems are fundamentally behaving differently today than they were just a few decades ago. As NIH researcher Dr. Frederick Miller points out, this surge is highly concerning. It heavily suggests that a massive environmental or lifestyle trigger is at play here. Think about it. Human genetics just do not evolve fast enough to explain a biological marker tripling in a mere 24 years. Something in our modern environment is actively altering the way these young immune systems function.
Section 3, the invisible suspect, microplastics.
Let's meet the microscopic invader, microplastics. These are polymeric, solid plastic particles less than 5,000 micrometers in size. They're shed from the breakdown of single-use plastics, synthetic clothing fibers, and even the tires on our cars. And they are literally everywhere. They've been found in deep ocean trenches, in the food we eat, the water we drink, and the air we unwittingly inhale every single day. Because of this constant, totally unavoidable exposure, you are essentially eating a credit card's worth of plastic every single week. Crazy, right? Bon appetit! But seriously, these bioaccumulative particles don't just pass cleanly through us. Research confirms they lodge right into our organs, including the liver, the placenta, and even breast milk.
Section 4, inside the body's systems.
When we check out the scientific scorecard evaluating human and animal studies, researchers have found high to moderate evidence linking these plastics to severe systemic damage. In the digestive tract, we're seeing chronic inflammation and immunosuppression. Down in the reproductive system, there's a suspected link to reduced sperm quality and ovarian follicle damage. And in the respiratory system, inhaling this stuff leads to pulmonary function drops and actual physical lung injury. It's incredibly fascinating, and a bit scary honestly, that 79% of the animal studies analyzed focused specifically on polystyrene. That's the exact same stuff used in your takeout containers and disposable packaging.
This really highlights how certain pervasive polymers are driving these toxicological findings. The data repeatedly shows that exposure to these specific plastics directly correlates with oxidative stress and cellular damage.
So, the crucial takeaway here is that this isn't just about chronic inflammation. These microscopic invaders are classified as a suspected hazard with potential links to both colon and lung cancer. Researchers found that microplastics actually alter how our cells divide, inducing the exact type of inflammation that acts as a precursor for those tumors.
Section 5. The Lifestyle Accomplices.
Now, beyond plastics, our daily choices and environments are heavily exacerbating this whole crisis. We're dealing with diets super high in processed foods and sugar that drive insulin resistance. We've got increasingly sedentary routines. And we're constantly exposed to environmental toxins, things like heavy metals such as lead, agricultural pesticides, and airborne particulate matter and ozone. All these factors basically pile on top of each other, creating a massive compounding toxic burden on young bodies.
Think of it like this. While your genetics might load the gun by setting a baseline risk for chronic conditions, it's our modern lifestyle and environmental toxins that ultimately pull the trigger. Having a family history of diabetes or autoimmune issues doesn't absolutely guarantee you'll get it. It's the activation by things like poor diet and pollution that actually triggers that onset in early adulthood.
Section 6. Reclaiming our health span.
Fortunately, the defense strategy is simple but powerful. First, shifting to a healthy diet full of whole grains, lean proteins, and healthy fats drastically reduces your intake of processed sugars and foodborne microplastics. Second, regular exercise. Aim for 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity weekly to combat insulin resistance. Third, prioritize routine medical screenings for early detection of blood pressure and glucose issues. And fourth, partner with your medical providers for proactive management.
Doing this requires a pretty massive paradigm shift. By taking proactive steps against these toxins and habits, we change our goal. The goal is no longer just extending our lifespan, it's about maximizing our health span. We need to focus on the number of years we actually spend free of chronic disease and disability. That is the true metric of a life well lived.
So, my final question to you is this. Armed with the evidence from this explainer today, what is one change you're going to make today to protect your future health span? The data shows the threats are very real, for sure, but it also proves that our daily choices hold incredible power. Thank you so much for joining me for this investigation, and I highly encourage you to look at your routine and take that first step today.